Hey, Jake.
Yeah, well.
Been doing some math.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Been doing some calculations.
Yes, and you're actually good at those? We can trust
No, but I am good at investigations, and I've deduced
Okay.
the swamp talk effect.
Interesting.
Guess number 2 on the season.
Yeah.
This is only applying to players.
Yeah.
Guess number 2 on the season. Mr. Cam Johnson
All right.
gets a season-opening shootout win. Stands on his head all game.
36 saves, yes?
36 saves.
Okay.
Guess number 2, player number 2, Logan Lambden.
Okay.
5-game point streak.
I like
Quickly followed after his appearance on Swamp Talk.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Player number 3, Mr. Bobo Carpenter. 2 goals in our last home series.
Gotta love it. And who's the next guest, Will?
Mr. Zach Tsekos.
Okay, so a new
So
guy.
what can we expect out of him?
Well, that'll be interesting to see because we got 3 games this week against the Greenville Swamp Rabbits.
That's true.
But before we can get to that, and we'll get to that for sure.
Oh, yeah.
We got to break down what we saw last week on a brand new episode of Swamp Talk, the official podcast of the Florida Everblades.
Let's go.
Will, last week it started off pretty good.
Did.
4-0 win. Evan Cormier, 32 saves for the shutout.
Big time.
Got a bunch of different guys scoring goals for his power play goal of the season.
Nathan Steos.
Unfortunately, the week didn't go that well for the rest of it. Back-to-back 4-2 losses to go 1-2 against the Solar Bears. Blades right now sitting under 500, 3-4. I mean, we're 7 games in.
Yep.
Being under 500 right now, who cares?
Not the end of the world.
Not the end of the world, but certainly not the way the Blades wanted it to be at this point in the year right now. Right?
No, absolutely not.
And I think especially after that first win, the first period wasn't great for sure. They were outshot 15-4, but they really rallied in the second. 3 goals in what was it? The first less than 5
I think
minutes?
it was 3:58 on the clock. 3 goals.
That's pretty good.
That is very good.
And that certainly the rest of that game was probably the best hockey we've seen from the Blades all year. It's just a shame that they couldn't keep it going into the next 2, right? And that after the loss on Friday, where it was not a good feeling in the locker room,
Nope.
Say that. You're hoping for more on Saturday, and you got it a little bit. The second and the third, the Blades certainly had more of a push in that game than they did on Friday, but still not enough. And I don't know. I don't believe you were down with me by the players' tunnel after
Was not.
the game
I was up
Saturday.
top.
The faces on the players as they were heading off the ice. Boy, you could tell that one hurt.
Yeah, and it's always difficult when you lose to a team like Orlando, who
Is your rival?
you've been battling for, it seems like 2 months now at this point, just going all the way back to the preseason
including
games.
Preseason, 7 games already against the Solar Bears. And they're going to play
Yeah.
each other next week, too, one more time.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then they finally get a nice long break from each other.
Yeah, they finally get a little bit of separation. But this is a team that, you've been playing so much, and certainly pride plays a point in that. You just want to beat the guy across the ice from you. But, it is difficult because we've talked about this a whole lot this season. Orlando is super talented. They've got a stacked roster. They've got a lot of great guys, a lot of fast skaters, a lot of dynamic playmakers. And, think about a baseball season. I don't expect every season that, say the Blue Jays are going to beat the Yankees every time they play that
You
season.
Say the Red Sox. I know you're a fan.
Okay, so the Red Sox are not going to beat the Yankees every time they play in one season. I would love
Right,
if they
saying
did
that?
it.
That hurts to say that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would like it, but again, it's not going to happen because
just
the
same way
Yankees.
The Blades would hope to beat the Solar Bears every season, every season series.
You play a team enough times every season, the other team is going to get a few of those matchups, and that isn't to say. Florida could have certainly played better, but you shouldn't let those 2 losses dictate how you feel about that opponent for the rest of the year.
Well, I know I've talked with a number of different coaches at a number of different levels. Anytime you're going into these kind of series where you're playing a team 2-3 times, you always want to try and finish 500, right?
Yes.
In a baseball series, it's the reason they always talk about it. You win the series. You win the little 3-game series that you're playing against the Kansas City Royals. It's important, right? And Orlando, who kind of falls... They're going to be a team that's competing for a playoff spot certainly this year in the South Division, but they're probably not going to be competing for the division lead, I wouldn't say.
No. Well, Jacksonville's got a great team.
Who knows? At this point also, it's very early. We haven't even seen 4 of the other teams in the South
That's
Division.
true, yeah.
We'll see Greenville this week for the first time, so we don't know what to expect. But Orlando is going to be a factor, but they're still a team. Well, actually, no, that's not the right way to put it, because the Blades are the back-to-back defending Kelly Cup champions. Everyone sees the Blades as the team they have to beat, the team that's the measuring stick, The Blades see everyone else as, we should beat these guys. We're the defending Kelly Cup champions.
Yeah.
So it's disappointing when you don't. And I wouldn't say there's any one factor that you can put. Like, you can't just say, oh, it's this thing's fault. If this gets fixed, it's all good. Which I'm not sure if that's more or less reassuring. But of course,
depends how you look. Yeah.
Yeah, but of course it is early in the season, and a lot of this stuff, you got time. You can still have lots of time to work on this.
Yeah, if these struggles were maybe popping up in late March, early April, might be a slight cause for concern. But like you said, we're only 3 weeks into the season.
That would also be, losing a series against a team that's battling with you for a playoff spot.
Yeah.
March and April is a lot different than right now.
Yeah, so I think, Blades fans, disappointing couple of losses.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep your hands off the panic button right now.
On home ice, you want it for the fans.
No doubt. But still a long season ahead, some great hockey ahead, and finally taking on a team outside of the state of Florida.
Yeah, heading out, the team, as we're recording this episode on Wednesday, they fly out Thursday.
Yep.
Going to Greenville, 3 games in 3 days. We'll talk about that later on in the podcast. But Will, before we can do that.
Yes, sir.
We got to have a nice long chat. For the guy, pretty smart, got some stuff to
Very
say.
smart. Spent a lot of years in Potsdam, New York, in the ECAC at Clarkson University.
Oh, I know you love that.
He is a scientist about taking care of his body.
He is. I know he's also one of 2 Blades who now wears neck protection.
That is true.
Which
definitely a hot topic.
Certainly all around the hockey world. That is arguably the hottest topic in the entire sport. And we'll talk about all of that and more with Zach Tsekos coming up next on Swamp Talk, the official podcast of the Florida Everblades.
And welcoming on this week's guest of Swamp Talk, Mr. Zach Tsekos. Zach, welcome to the show, and welcome to a little bit of a different locale than usual, but should still be a good one.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
So, last week in the big win against Orlando, you got things started, scoring just 15 seconds into the second period. What is it like when you scoring a goal? Obviously is always great, but scoring a goal that fast into a period when your team was looking for a win last Wednesday, what's that kind of like?
Yeah, I think especially looking back to that game, we weren't happy with our first period at all, and so, like you said, kind of having that happen that early in the period adds a little extra to it, and so yeah, there's a little bit of a different element to it, and it kind of kickstarted us into the rest of the period. And I think that was one of our better periods of the season, so it can definitely have that effect if you're able to kind of get on them early.
And how important is that, being able to make kind of intermission adjustments? Didn't have the first period that you would have wanted, and then came out for a really scorching second. So, what does that say to the adaptability of the team?
Yeah, I mean, you play a team like Orlando so many times. I think we've already, including preseason, maybe 7 times already, I think we're at. So it's not so much about, the systems anymore. We kind of know what they're going to do. They know what we're going to do. We just weren't really happy with our compete and our effort. And so that was kind of the message within periods, a couple tweaks here and there, but more so just, winning foot races, winning battles. And so I think we just kind of got to that in the second and third period especially.
And would you say that was something that kind of changed between Wednesday's win and the 2 losses Friday, Saturday?
Yeah, I think kind of the story of our year so far has been putting together either, 30 or 40 minutes of a game, and I think we're dominant for stretches, and then we've got lulls. And, I think just playing hockey for as long as I have, that's typical for most teams, especially early in the year, to find that consistency for 60 minutes. So that's kind of what we're building towards right now. And, as we've gone forward here early in the season, it's kind of been the story, and that's kind of why we're operating around 500, is that kind of the lack of consistency for 60 minutes.
And what do you think this team needs to do to put it all together? I know there's a lot of new guys. You're one of them. You have to learn the system, all that kind of stuff. So what do you think it's going to take for this group to fully gel and start getting some wins stacked together?
Yeah, I think we can build definitely off that second and third on Saturday. I know we didn't come away with the results, but I thought that was maybe our best hockey of the year, at least at 5-on-5. And so building off that, we've kind of now shown ourselves how we can play when we're at our best. And I think that was important for us to see, kind of have a dominant stretch where it really felt like the ice was tilted. And I think obviously our special teams have got to start executing. And that in a league like this where, 5-on-5, a lot of teams are going to be tight checking, and especially within this division, you got to be able to separate yourselves on special teams. So that's an area of focus for us right now.
And you kind of hinted at this between just your playing career and just how many times you guys play Orlando. And it's no secret that the ECHL season is a slog. You just played 3 consecutive games in 4 days. So it's not going to be easy. In this upcoming week, it's 3 games and about 2.5 games because the third of those games is a matinee. This is something that we got tipped off about you, is that you are very diligent about your recovery, about what you take, about your tendencies and your habits in between games and post practice. So do you want to just kind of walk us through that whole process?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something I always did, starting probably on the tail end of my college career. So looking back maybe, 3 years ago, I started to really try and dial into that aspect of things. In college, I don't want to say it's not as important, but you're playing Friday, Saturday games every weekend, and you've got, Sunday through Thursday to really recover, make sure you're primed. Whereas I really started kind of getting into it here because although sometimes maybe the early parts of the week are a little less strenuous, you can have Wednesday, Friday, Saturday games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you have to be able to be available and be sharp for those games. It's a 72-game season, and a lot of those games are going to be clustered together. And if you're not able to show up, or if you're, if you happen to get injured and you miss a weekend, all of a sudden, maybe it's 4 games that you're out, and that's, you don't want to, be missing extended times like that. So for me, it's, huge concentration on my sleep, huge concentration in the times around practice blocks during the week. So, before and after, making sure I'm getting the right things in my body, make sure I'm warming up, cooling down properly. And then outside of that, it's kind of just mostly like what everyone does, but especially around when we're on the ice and sleep, I think I try to really take care of myself.
And is this for are you tracking your sleep? Are you kind of taking different things? When did this, you said you didn't really do it in college, but was there a moment in time where you kind of looked back and were like, I need to start, tracking this stuff and taking better care of myself and all that?
Yeah, especially, like I said, towards the tail end of the college career, I dealt with injuries. I was always someone who took exercise and, the time that I was on the ice very seriously, but still found myself getting, soft tissue injuries and whatnot just because of the nature of the sport. And I wanted to find a way to be, available all the time. I didn't want to go into games with, kinks and, strains that a lot of guys will end up playing through, but maybe, you're not able to give your 100% on a nightly basis. So I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And so, I think probably about 2 years ago, right around my senior year of college into my first year professional, I started diving into that. I wear this fitness tracker. It's Whoop.
Oh yeah.
Not to mention anything specific, but I kind of track my sleep through that mostly. It's great for other things too, but it really helps me plan out my sleeps. I don't need it too much anymore because I've used it for a while now, and I know what habits work well for me and which ones don't. But it's still nice to have and just kind of keeps me accountable. And
if there's any, young hockey players listening to this episode that you would, give them some advice about, taking care of your body, taking care of everything going on and looking forward for a long career in hockey, what is some advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I know I'm going to sound like an old head here, but if I could go back, I would do that part differently. I was someone who, throughout my teenage years and up into, high school and maybe even freshman year of college, my sleep schedule was maybe, 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. And 6 hours of sleep just isn't going to get it done, especially, even more importantly, when you're young, you're going through so many physical changes that, say that age group of 14 to 20, you can put on so much, muscle. You can really kind of start to understand your body as it goes through those changes. And like if you're getting 6 hours of sleep, even 7, it's just not going to be enough for you to really get to your potential.
You mentioned earlier that this isn't the start of your pro career. You started with the Utah Grizzlies over, not quite the West Coast, but pretty close, and that division is way different than the South. The travel's very different, the style of play. I know we're early on here in your career with Florida, but tell us a little bit about the differences between playing in the South versus the Mountain Division.
I think for starters, I think we're going to start transitioning into it now, more so where, I think, this weekend is a little different. We're playing the 3-3, all against one team, but, the playing multiple teams throughout the week, having to travel, say on Thursday, come back, have a rest day, play Saturday at home. That wasn't kind of the travel style in the Mountain Division. We were pretty isolated out in Utah, so it was either teams come to us for 3 games, on a Wednesday, Friday, Saturday schedule. You play all 3 games against the same team that weekend. Next weekend, you go out to maybe Texas. You play that team 3 times in 3 days. So it becomes a lot of, home series, and that's, those take on a life of their own. Whereas I think here, once we get into the, kind of the meat of our schedule, you might be playing, Atlanta on one day, Greenville the next, and so there's not too many of those series. And I know we've had a lot with Orlando here to start, but I think as we move forward, that will certainly be a little different. And then playing style-wise, I don't know if it's across the league this year. I've talked to friends and I've talked to other guys who still play back in Utah, or whether that's in the Central Division or whatnot. It seems like the quality of hockey in general has gone up. That's definitely been my experience here in the South, and that might be unique to this division as well. But I think across the league this year, I don't know what kind of reasons might be pushing those, but I think the quality of hockey this year, at least through the first, 3 weeks now, has been up compared to what I thought last year.
Yeah, I would say that too. We've had some great games. Unfortunately, some of them haven't gone the way we want them to, but they've been certainly entertaining games to watch, and you can tell a number of teams, not just the Blades, are improved from last year.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And the team hasn't even traveled outside the state of Florida, which is, Florida's pretty big. You can drive for hours and hours and not be in Jacksonville. But like you said, you're traveling cross country when you're with Utah. So, there's got to be a couple horror stories doing that.
Yeah, we had the only tough one really was Rapid City, because that was a long bus ride, sleeper bus. And so we had some issues there on one of the trips. And I, coming from college where I was at in my division, we didn't have too many long bus trips. I think the longest one we had was maybe 6 or 7 hours. I didn't play juniors, so I didn't have those grueling types of bus trips. And so doing that last year was a different experience for me. But because Utah was so isolated, you end up flying almost everywhere, which is kind of nice. So there wasn't too many stories there. But I remember going to Rapid City was a different experience for me. And I think the year before I got there, they had plane couldn't take off because there was the conditions were too windy or cold or whatever it was in Rapid City. So then guys had to drive overnight in rental cars down to it was just kind of one of those weekends. I wasn't there for it, but I'd heard from the guys before. But yeah, I think we'll kind of start to dive into those now as we start to go outside of Florida, like you said.
It's never going to be too cold to get off.
Yeah.
Florida. Are you guys flying to Greenville for the 3 games in 3 days this weekend?
Yeah, we'll be taking off Thursday, so tomorrow.
Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Sometimes it can be a little bit split, especially if it were going to be you're going to Greenville and then you bus to South Carolina. There's a few of those, but just curious about that.
Yeah, I think kind of some of the trips where maybe the trip starts in Jacksonville, and that's the first game, we might bus there and then bus throughout the trip, come back, right? But I think with that, just having the 3 game set there, they wanted to just kind of get us in and out.
Yeah. Easier, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Less time.
Yeah.
You mentioned your college playing days on the not-so-long bus trips, but Clarkson University were a captain there, ECAC hockey. What was just your experience? And I'm a college hockey nut, so I love hearing about these stories. I was asking Bobo about it last week at his time at BU. But what was college hockey like in Potsdam, playing a lot of the great teams of New York and just kind of all around the Northeast U.S. And what was that experience like for you to develop as a hockey player?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to I haven't experienced necessarily the other leagues, but you've obviously play out of conference games and you realize the other conferences' styles. ECAC is a very old league, very tight checking league. A lot of the coaches emphasize kind of a more defensive minded structure of hockey apart from a couple teams. And so going to the next level where that's the stress, whether you're playing, NHL, AHL, East Coast, Europe, whatever that might be, that's kind of the style coaches want to play. And so in the ECAC, you kind of have to learn how to operate in tight spaces with limited time. I don't think there was necessarily, comparing it to maybe Hockey East, Big Ten, necessarily the NHL talent that Some of these guys come in as 18, 19-year-olds, and they've got, all kinds of playmaking skills, and they want to play that kind of game. Whereas, ECAC is guys will age out of juniors for the most part, come into the league a little older, a little more physically mature, and so it's that kind of hockey, which I think really prepares you to play at the next level.
And your tournament is ECAC tournament every year is up in Lake Placid, right? And
Yeah.
that's just one of my favorite places to go to. I love that rink. I love that town. What was that whole experience like?
Yeah, so I had only once I ended up going there playing. I transferred into Clarkson as a junior, and then one of the years was shut down from COVID. And so the only year that we had, for me at least, within my years of eligibility to go to Lake Placid was my last year. We were a pretty good team. You're only down to 4 teams when you get there, so it's usually the quality of hockey is pretty high. We played a Harvard team that has, I think now maybe like 4 or 5 of those guys have played NHL games since then, and so they were kind of loaded with that type of talent that you'd see maybe more on the Hockey East side of things, and we had a really good game with them, but we ended up falling short. Other than that, though, you kind of feel different when you get into that city. You feel the presence a little bit of obviously some of the history that's happened there, and you walk into the rink, and once the puck drops, you kind of focus in on everything. But outside of that game time, it's like you kind of feel that you're in a little bit of a different area.
Yeah. Awesome town. Awesome. If you haven't been to Lake Placid, New York, get there.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. We talk about it all the time. It's I think 3 straight episodes now at least.
Have I brought up Lake Placid in 3 straight episodes? There's no way.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we had Lambden college hockey player, then last week Carpenter.
Oh, college hockey. I'll bring up any chance I get.
I know you will. I know. I'm a
Hashtag college hockey.
Canada,
There you go.
so-
Yeah.
On a more serious note, you were one of 2 Blades players this week to start wearing some form of neck protection. Obviously, what happened with Adam Johnson over the Nottingham Panthers, very tragic. I'd imagine that had some impact on your decision. Just take us through what led you to make that change.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know everybody has their styles and their the way that they want to play the game and wear certain pieces of equipment. I'm not someone that's terribly superstitious, or I'm not too picky about stuff like that. So I know some guys don't wear an undershirt at all because it makes them feel very hot, or they don't like it on the way it feels on their body. They like to feel a little more loose, a little more free, so they will stray away from those types of materials. For myself, and Bobo being the second one that's transitioned to wearing it, again, it doesn't bother me, and so why not at least try it? I didn't know if I would continue with it. If it was going to bother me, I might have stopped, but as long as it wasn't going to be something that impacted, I didn't want to think about it. And if I felt myself thinking about it on the ice, then I probably would have let it go. But I mean, I've been wearing it for about a week now and hasn't made a difference for me. And so, between that, we have access to wrist guards that provide the same type of Kevlar protection for those susceptible areas. Same thing around our, right above our skates for Achilles injuries. We wear cut-proof socks. Again, not necessarily everyone wears them, but they don't bother me. So, why not is kind of my rationale.
Yeah, no bother for you through now 3 games and some practice time. I mean, you scored a goal with it in your first game.
Yeah.
So
You and Bobo were the
and
first
I
2
both. Yeah, exactly. So we were talking about that in the room just after the game, just a little funny thing. But yeah, no issues. So I'll continue to wear it probably for the rest of my career.
Do you think you and Bobo maybe wearing it might convince some of the other guys on the team that were maybe on the fence about it, but didn't want to go towards it just maybe for comfort reasons, or they thought it might mess with their play style? Do you think they'll go for it, or do you think the people that are going for it will go for it, and the people that won't?
I think most of the guys that whether it's around the league or other leagues, if they haven't transitioned to it yet, I don't see too many more guys going to it. Honestly. Guys were very curious around the room with Bobo and I after we played that first game, because we both we weren't able to practice with it or anything. That Wednesday game was the first time we wore them.
Oh, wow.
And so we wore them during warm-ups, and we're like, kind of feeling it out, asking each other, did you feel a little hot? Did you feel uncomfortable? Neither of us had any issues with it. Other guys started asking us about it. Obviously, we had good reviews for it, so there might be a couple guys that try them. Whether they stick with them, I don't know. But kind of hockey players, known as creatures of habits. So I think a lot of guys have a little bit of, they're going to shy away from it. But I think mostly if they haven't tried it by now, I don't think that you'll see too many more.
Did any Orlando players ask you about it?
No. I think I wouldn't have been surprised. I think there's also an element of, obviously everything's so recent right now. A lot of guys are trying to stray away from thinking about it. Yeah, exactly. So, I wouldn't be surprised though. And I don't think they had anyone wear them. But
I can't remember anybody.
I've seen around the league, watching some highlights here and there from other teams. I think Pittsburgh, as an organization, mandated it at their AHL. At their AHL and East Coast levels. There's certain leagues, obviously, that are mandating it. Obviously, the English League, they're mandating it starting maybe effective immediately. The WHL, I think, is starting in December, or it was immediately as well.
Pretty close to it.
So,
OJHL and QL.
Yeah, I think there might be eventually, looking long term, there might be some sort of the same way the visors were grandfathered into every level of pro hockey now. You might eventually see it, say 3 years from now, saying every new player that comes into the NHL, you have to wear a neck guard, or whatever the case may be. Because once guys start getting used to it in juniors, then they're going to be able to mandate it in pro. But now you're asking guys who haven't worn it in juniors to now throw them back on in pro once they get to that level. I think that they wouldn't be able to really pass. But I can see it becoming a staple. If we look in 10 years from now, I think you'll probably see a good amount of players wearing them.
Yeah, well, it's sort of similar to wearing the helmets during warm-ups. That used to be a staple of warming up in the game, and now it seems pretty natural to just keep the helmet on.
Yeah.
Well, now in NHL, you get fined if you don't.
Yeah. So, I think some good strides are being taken in terms of safety for the future games of hockey.
Yeah, I mean, it's just tough. Like, we're the only sport that has that element of a skate blade, right? That can really cause serious issues. Every other sport, you can obviously get hurt in different ways, but there's nothing that can a
cleat on your hand is not the same as a skate.
Yeah, so there's nothing that's going to be severing, different, obviously susceptible areas of your body. So it's a different element to the sport.
Yeah. Well, certainly some strides to be taken for safety.
Yeah.
And now, just one last thing, looking forward to these 3 games ahead against Greenville. Last year, all the games were 5 of the 6 one-score games. 4 of the 6 go to overtime. No game had either team score more than 3 goals in any of the games. I know you haven't really seen Greenville, or at least I don't believe you played them when you were with Utah. So, but I know you're used to tight checking, low scoring. You said that at Clarkson, right?
Yeah.
So a game like this, someone like you who's experienced in this type of hockey, maybe quite a bit more so than some of the new guys coming in, what can you hope to do to kind of just help get the team that extra little bit ready for 3 games against Greenville? Probably the biggest test of the early season.
Yeah, obviously, 3-game sets, you have to show up right from the start because you want to set the tone early. You want to establish your style of hockey. Obviously, both teams are going to have little nuances to the game, but you want to, as much as you can, impose your type of game on the other team. And then the second thing I would say is the ability to be patient in those types of low-scoring games. You might end up going into the third period tied 0-0 or 1-1 or whatever it may be. And if you,
sounds like Greenville.
and so if you start going into those third periods with frustration or impatience, you start to chase the game a little bit. You start to maybe cheat a little bit, and then all of a sudden things start to unravel, right? And if it's even only 1, 2, 3, 5 guys that are doing it out of the lineup, it just has a trickle-down effect. The energy on the bench starts to get a little negative because you're seeing that guy cheating the game a little bit, and so there starts to be some conversations there. So trying to stay patient. Again, it might happen that the first game is low scoring. Maybe we win a 2-1 game or whatnot, and so guys the second game want to start pushing a little more, and it's like you just got to keep patient, and hopefully they're not as disciplined on the other end. Game opens up for us, and that's kind of where you can start to showcase your talent and your skills.
All right, well, looking forward to a strong 3-game series against the Swamp Rabbits coming up. Zach, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
First new player on the podcast.
Yeah, wow, yeah. We're breaking into uncharted territory
Honored.
now.
Yes, we are. Swamp Talk continues on after this. Well, Will, just as I said, going into the interview, Zach Tsekos certainly Smart dude, lots to say.
Student of the game.
Student of the game and of his health. I mean,
Yeah.
you just see the dude. He looks like a pro athlete ready to go.
Yep.
And the team's got to be ready to go with him. Friday night, November 10th, 7:05 puck drop, the first of 3 games in 3 days, but effectively, as you said, kind of more 2.5.
2.5.
Because that Sunday game is a matinee matchup. So Friday, November 10th, Saturday, November 11th, Sunday, November 12th. 3 straight games, all against Greenville. Going back to last year, Will, I talked about it in the interview. 5 of the 6 games were 1-goal games. 4 of the 6 went into extra time. All of them low scoring, all of them tight defensive battles. There's not going to be a lot of room. Greenville has a number of players returning from last year's roster, number of important pieces. They are missing some guys like Alex Irulo, who was arguably the best rookie in the entire ECHL, definitely the best rookie in the South Division last year. But this is a big test for the Blades. It's arguably, for me, this is the first real test for this new group.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the games against Orlando is a big firepower team. It's a team that's just going to overwhelm you with shots, overwhelm you with opportunities.
Going run and gun all night.
No, absolutely not. Now, Greenville, on the other hand, might play a bit more back on their heels, a little more park the bus, really strong defensively. Like you said, the ice sheet is going to seem a lot smaller against Greenville than against Orlando, but that might play into Florida's hands because the way that the Everblades tend to take a lot more high quality versus, just overabundance of quantity shots, and they play some very good defensive hockey. The PK unit has been strong all season. Defensively, they've been pretty solid in the neutral zone, and I think that kind of game might play. It's still yet to be seen. They haven't played yet, but this style of game might play more into Florida's hands.
Yeah, well, that's certainly what you hope. I mean, those are the kind of games that get it done in the playoffs a lot of the time, right? No team has ever won a Kelly Cup or anything like that playing only run and gun high event hockey. You've got to be able to get down in the muck sometimes. And those games, they're tough on you physically, they're tough on you mentally. That's part of the reason I think it's such a huge test, is you're coming off 2 tough losses against arguably your biggest rival. Now you're going onto the road into a hostile building that really does not like the Blades. Bon Secours Wellness Arena, it's not an easy place to play, and you've got to do it 3 games in less than 3 nights against a team that's going to wear you down. It's a huge test for the team, I think, just their character and their ability to stay strong for all 3. Because if the Blades can show they can play strong hockey through all 3 of these games, then it will assuage a lot of worries for the entire season. Yeah,
this will be a really good bounce back test for them, and I think the fact that there is no game today, like there's no Wednesday game, and they're going into a Friday set. I think that'll
help a little bit of extra rest.
Some more rest, guys can kind of work on some things that they want to work on. And we've been seeing at practice, there's been more time dedicated towards the power play
practices for the guys.
Yeah, so the guys have certainly been getting worked on the practice sheet. Now it's time to put that work into a game sense. And like you said, this is really the first time, although they've been on the road before this season, it's the first time really leaving home on the other side of the horizon. The only other 2 games, Orlando and Jacksonville, those are your only other road contests. Now you're leaving the state. Now you're really deep behind enemy lines, and you're playing a team that is very physical, going to be very, very challenging for a full 60 minutes of hockey, which we've seen on certain occasions has been difficult for the Blades to manage. Yeah. So this is definitely going to be kind of a benchmark for how the rest of the season goes.
Well, it's like Tsekos said, right? 30, 40 minutes, the Blades can do that, no problem.
No doubt.
But 30 to 40 minutes, it'll win you some games, but it's not going to win you enough to get anything real.
And it's certainly not going to win you another Kelly Cup.
No, it certainly won't. So you work your way up. Maybe these games are tough, but maybe also make it so that you're playing 45 minutes of great hockey and 15 minutes of good, as opposed to 40 minutes of good and 20 minutes of not so good.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be 60 straight minutes where you're just all over them, you outshoot them 50 to 10 or something like that, but it needs to be 60 minutes where the Blades never spend any time as the clearly inferior team.
Yeah, and I think, establishing a really good power play power play set this series.
Get going a little bit more. I mean, getting off the schneid on the power play was good on Wednesday.
For sure.
But they went scoreless in back-to-back games in the loss, and there were certainly some power play openings, particularly the one on Friday. 0 for 7's not great.
Yeah, That's not going to win too many games. I mean, if the Blades were converting a fifth of their power play opportunities, they would be one of the highest scoring teams.
Slightly above league average, I believe.
Yeah,
that would be.
So even I'm not saying the Blades got to wake up tomorrow and be got to convert on 60 or 70% of the power plays, but just finding the back of the net on a few more of those opportunities would go a huge way.
I think if you can get it up to right now, like, you don't need to set your sights just like when you're starting a diet or an exercise program, right? You're not going to say, I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 6 weeks, because that's just, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. Right now you go in and say, if we can get a couple power play goals at an important time, or even just, okay, we got a power play goal, but it wasn't really necessary to get the win on Wednesday. Now let's see if we can get a power play goal in the clutch. Okay, we got that. Now let's see if we can get 2 power play goals in a series. Okay, we've got that. Now let's try to get a power play goal in every game, or try and get multiple power play goals in one game. And of course, some of that will be dependent on the opportunities, tight defensive games. It'll sort of honestly depend in those kind of matchups how the refs want to call it. Sometimes
that's a good point.
They're going to let the guys battle it out. We're not going to see many power plays for either teams. Other times, they'll be really on it about everything, and both teams will get a lot of opportunities. Always got to watch the discipline, of course. Greenville, their power play was good against Florida last year. They're missing some key players from what made those power plays so good against Florida last year, but it's still a strong squad, and it's a team, they're kind of in a similar boat to Jacksonville, where they've made the playoffs the last couple of years. Their team is 3 years removed from an Eastern Conference Finals berth. They want to figure out how to take that next step and get back there. I mean, of course, the Blades have been in the way the past 2 years, and that's made things very tough, and Florida wants to do that again. But Greenville's one of those teams that they see themselves as a legit challenger for this division. They are in the same boat as Jacksonville, where, okay, we can make the playoffs consistently now. We're not worried about that. Now we're trying to take that next step and be the team that comes out of the division.
Yeah, and I think a hungry Greenville especially is a dangerous opponent for the Everblades.
And they're on a 2-game winning streak right now. They've won 5 of their first 6 games. They're feeling good about their group right now.
They're feeling solid. They're feeling good. But the Blades should feel good too.
The Blades have plenty of reasons to feel good. Some of them, a guy like Zach Tsekos, who's certainly, I would say this past week it was his best week of Blades hockey.
No doubt, yeah. Played a really complete game.
More settled into the group and how they like to play. Always important for all the new guys. But this is going to be a big week for Florida.
No doubt. Excited to see how they manage a really tough road battle.
Yeah, 3 road games coming up this week. You can follow along in the Fifth Third Bank Florida Everblades Broadcast Network, ESPN Southwest Florida for Friday's game, everblades.mixler.com on our Mixler channel for Saturday and Sunday. And, of course, you can watch live on flowhockey.tv for all 3 matchups. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Swamp Talk, the Florida Everblades official podcast. I'm Jake. He's Will. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week with a new guest and some more Blades hockey talk.